I'd like to excuse Councilman Staley. He's on a little R&R with his family. We're going to start by having an invocation by Councilman Jeff Turek, and I've asked Garth Nyson if he'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear, kind, gracious, loving Father in heaven, as we humbly bow our heads and come before the beginning of this city council meeting, we do so, Father, with gratitude and thanks in our hearts for the many blessings that Thou bestowed upon us. Grateful for the freedoms and the opportunities and blessings that we enjoy in this great land. Father, we're grateful for the opportunity that we have of living here in this great city of Washington, for the great residents that we enjoy rubbing shoulders with and building friendships and relationships with. Father, we're grateful for those great men and women who are served in our country and foreign lands, and also here within our own city, providing protections and blessings for us to enjoy. And we pray for them and pray for their families, that they will be blessed with those special blessings that Thou knowest that they stand in need of. Bless them with protection, with health, with strength, with wisdom, and guidance and direction in their lives as they fulfill those duties and responsibilities. Father, now as we prepare to take care of the city's business this night, we pray for guidance and direction. We pray for wisdom. We pray for the inspiration and words of direction from those residents who have come to share with us their ideas and help us to incorporate those ideas and finding solutions to the problems that we face within our community. We also seek guidance and direction as we make decisions that we make those decisions that will benefit the prosperity and the lifestyles that we enjoy in this great community. We again give gratitude and thanks for all that Thou does for us and gives to us, and seek these blessings at this time in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Turek and Councilman Nyson, for that. I'd like to welcome, what troop are you out there? Welcome. I'm glad to have you here to witness a city council meeting. We're going to move on with the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion. We approve the agenda.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Turek, aye.
Segmiller, aye. Truman, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Item 2, announcements. Any announcements to be brought? This time, if not, we'll move on to item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Anything to declare, gentlemen? Okay. Move on to item 4, our consent agenda to approve the minutes of council meetings 5/12/15 and 5/13/15. Any questions or comments on those minutes?
Mayor, if there's none, I'll make the motion that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes, of council meetings 5/12/15 and 5/13/15.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Nice night.
Truman, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. Item 5, public hearings and related ordinances. Our item A is a public hearing for consideration to make internal funds transfer from the sewer fund to the general fund to cover the expense of the golf course. And it is an open public hearing. We appreciate hearing from all of you that would be interested in sharing ideas and thoughts. But before we do, I just want to, Kimberly, do you have that we could put on them? I want to share a little history about the golf course and some reasons why we're at this point. We will, yeah, we will be, Dennis, as soon as I get done with this. We're in the public hearing, okay. Green Springs Golf Course was opened in 1987, and since the opening, the Green Springs Golf Course has accrued approximately $2.7 million in deficit spending. The negative cash flow is noted each year and then in the annual audit and under previous accounting rules. Loans from other city funds were allowed and granted to cover the shortfall. The council has been in discussion with this issue for many years, looking for ways that we can lessen this deficit. In the 2014 legislative session, the accounting and reporting requirements were changed to require governmental entities to address negative balances and cash flow needs for proprietary funds. The state has given municipalities a short time of window to address this change. It's therefore necessary for the council to determine a course of action, receive public input, and provide for the necessary funding for the golf course. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide an option of financing to the public and receive input. The staff and council developed a list of alternatives for funding, and from the few options that were available, determined that funding all or a portion of the funds would be needed to come from the sewer fund. The sewer fund has accrued over the past few years a positive balance due in part to efficiencies and exceeded growth projections, etc. The transfer of all or a portion of the funds needed from the sewer fund is not estimated to impact its operations or result in an increased user rate. We are currently undertaking a new rate and facility study for the sewer fund in light of the operations and balance in this fund over the past few years. There are some surplus funds available in the general fund that could take care of the portion of the negative golf course balance, but short-term needs make it prudent to maintain a strong fund balance in this fund. It is recommended that if funds from the sewer fund are used, that future sale of city land may be earmarked to reimburse all or a portion of that fund. And it is anticipated that the city will be selling surplus land within the next 5 to 10 years. Use of funds from the sewer department are both necessary and will provide the greatest cash flow flexibility for the city, while providing the ability for the fund to be made whole within a few years. The purpose of this hearing tonight is to receive input back from you on this course of action that we're looking at, and or to receive additional recommendations for a resolution to the situation that we have. And so we thank you for coming and your participation should you choose to. And so now we'll open the public hearing. To those that would like to come on up, please state your name. I just declared it. Come on out.
I've seen these funds transferred.
Could we,
Steve Treese. I've seen these funds transferred all through the government and have not seen any of them that come out in a positive bill. I mean, they stole money from Social Security and transferred it into another fund. Now Social Security's in trouble because they took it. Okay, I see no resolution to the golf course. All you're doing is prolonging its death. And I personally don't want to pay into the sewer fund to save the golf course.
you think the golf course adds a value to the city?
Do I think that the golf course has value?
Mhm.
Evidently not enough, or it'd be self-sufficient. If it had enough interest in the public had enough interest in it, it would be self-sustaining. And if it's not, then I don't see where you're saving it. You're prolonging it, maybe, but you're not saving it until you can get the interest that you need in that golf course. It's going to die anyway. So why waste $3 million? Throw it in the air, burn it, do whatever you want to. You're not gaining.
So you think that, this is a hypothetical question, you think any golf course in the state is making money?
I wouldn't know that. I don't own any. I don't have any idea what they do. But I do know that if this golf course is failing, it's not the sewer's responsibility to save it. And I pay into the sewer to maintain the sewer. I'm not paying to maintain the golf course. I have no interest in the golf course. I can't swing a club. I can't do any of it. It has no interest to me. and I don't want to put my money in it.
And I can certainly understand your position there. You pay into the sewer fund for sewer, and then all of a sudden we're saying, oh, well, we need to use this money for something else. Then you might be asking yourself, well, why did I pay so much into the sewer fund then?
Right.
We've got an
And-
excess in
and-
there, but,
It seems like when they make these transfers, it's just like the state of Utah, when they took all the money out of the highway fund and put it into another fund. Then they had a bad snowstorm and they didn't have funds to even plow the roads and sand them.
let me just make this comment. I understand your position on the golf course. If it's not making money, why do we keep it going? And the same could be said of our community center, our parks, all of those kind of things. So we have to figure out, where do you draw the line on what's a public benefit that should be funded with general dollars versus not?
Well, and I understand that too. I know that the community center hasn't been making its way. I think it was built premature. It was built before its time to be a necessity. And I think you guys is just throwing money in here because you got it.
Okay.
Any other
Appreciate your
comment,
input.
council? Thank you.
Thanks.
Bill Hudson, resident of Washington City. I appreciate the magnitude. $2.7 million is a lot of money. But in my opinion, that's what you've been saving money for. That's why you have a rainy day fund. That's why you have a savings account. In my budget, if I do something dumb, I use my savings account. I can't go borrow it from my neighbor and hope that someday they'll let me repay it. If I sell some property, I'm really concerned about taking fees that were set aside and taxed by our residents and using those for another purpose. Whether there's a promise to repay it later, those promises can easily be taken away by a legislative body such as yourselves or such as another body 5 years or 10 years down the road. It's not an easy choice. It's not. But I believe that that's why you have a savings account.
And when you're talking about savings account, are you talking about tightening the belt on the general fund?
Yeah,
Let the
that's
general
what you
fund
got to
pay
do.
that?
This was a mistake that was made by staff and legislative body across the board. It's been going on for a long time, since the golf courses probably started.
Even during your tenure
And
here.
during my tenure, yes, I served for 4 years up there. And I agree, yes. I look at it and wish that we had done something about it then. We had been led to believe, and it's been historical, that it was okay to continue it. We'd figure it out. Well, the day came. Now you guys get to make the choice of what to do about it. Luckily, I'm not up there now. But let me tell you, I believe that that's why you have the savings account. Is for things like this. It's why you have a fund balance. It's not to tap into the sewer fund.
If there's excess funds in the sewer fund, what would you propose that could be sent back as rebates?
Either rebates or lower the fees that are being charged now. I would hope that would be done anyways. If there's that much extra, that's what it's for. Yes,
That's kind of what I think the taxpayer would believe, right?
I would hope so. Yeah. Yes.
No.
My name's Dennis Iverson, and I've had one of those seats before as well. But my philosophy of government is that entities should, particularly if it's a program such as a golf course, should sustain itself. I know that when the golf course was first built, it was presented as an entity that would substitute or supplement the city funds, that the taxpayers would actually benefit from it. Doesn't look like we're benefiting from it if we're going in the arrears that amount. I don't suppose it's unconstitutional to take money from one person to pay for the benefit of someone else, but I think it's immoral too. And I believe that if we're charging too much for the sewer fund, then the sewer fund should be reduced. Fund that's available to you to take care of shortfalls is your general fund. And that's the fund you need to work with and to accomplish the debts that you have. You shouldn't take money from individuals in the community to build a fund to supplement and subsidize a fund that others are receiving the benefit for. That's my feeling. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
My name's John Rote. I live in Ridge Point, and we live right on top of a fault line up there. One of the topics of conversation quite often is, what if we have a major earthquake or even a minor earthquake around here and sewer pipes get broke all over the place? That's going to take well over $1 million. And I'd like to know that it's in the bank and it will get done, or we'll be living in a swamp for a long time before the sewer ever gets back in condition. So I don't see why all these years, after all these years, everybody's put more in than came out, because we know something bad's going to happen someday. I often figure I'm kind of silly that we're built on top of a fault, but that's one of the things going to go. It's going to be sewer, water, and electric. And I can't see saving the golf course and then not having money to repair a sewer line when the time comes. So we should reconsider.
Thank you. Point. Anybody else?
Evening, Council. My name is Thomas Gerke, and I have lived in Washington City for some time now and truly appreciate the amenities that we have here. However, for me, golf is a very expensive game. Therefore, you have to have the money and you have to have the time. And to have the time, normally you have to have the money to play golf. I feel it is immoral at the minimum, and hopefully illegal, to tax us through monthly fees and build up a sewer fund, emergency fund. That's a great comment there, that you never know when we might need it. We actually did have an earthquake here the other day, very minor, but I felt it. I feel it's wrong to perhaps 95% of us that cannot afford nor have the time to golf, to force us, no choice, force us to pay into this sewer fund, and then, in my opinion, steal it and give it to the rich golfers. If the golfers want to golf, let them pay for it. If they can't figure out a way to make it work, close it down. There's many, many other things in this city that we certainly could use that $2.8 million, if we've got it to spend, that would benefit far, far, far more people. I haven't had the privilege of sitting up there on the council, but I also understand how very difficult it is, and it should have been addressed many years ago. I didn't hear the exact date, but I heard something in the 1990s. So we're looking at 15 to 20 years ago that this has been going on, and everybody keeps kicking it down the road. One look at our $18 trillion national debt. All of our Social Security money, as the previous gentleman said, has been stolen. Now there is none, and it should be a trust fund, our highway trust fund, our airport trust fund. I'm tired of the government stealing. No, let's not use the word stealing. Forcing us taxpayers to pay into a specific fund and then taking that fund and using it elsewhere. Another comment was made, I believe, by Mr. Nielsen, that perhaps in 5 to 10 years, taxpayer, that's all of us, including you, owned land might be sold to reimburse the sewer fund. Well, that's not right either. If we're going to have that property for sale, then that sale ought to benefit the largest number of people possible in this city or this county or however the entity is, so that we're not using that money to subsidize a golf course, because that's in essence where it would come from. Whether it's the property sold next week, next year, or 15 years from now, it's subsidizing the golf course. What's going to happen from tonight for the next 365 days to create an atmosphere, financial atmosphere, that this golf course is going to be self-sustaining? Or are we going to be back here next year? Well, we need $287,000 more dollars to support it. Meanwhile, I'm 75 years old. I'm working a full-time job. My wife is working a full-time job, and I'm working a part-time job just to be able to have a shelter and food on the table and maybe save a little bit for the future. And I don't think it's right that my wife and I have to work these long, hard hours at any age. I don't care if you're 25 or 75 to support a golfer who has the time and the money to go golfing. That's my feelings, that it shouldn't be done, period. I don't particularly think that I would refund that $2.5 million or $2.8 million. I think it should stay where it's at. Anytime you touch a sewer line, it's cost money. If you touch a water line, it costs money. I like to have a balanced budget. I like to have a rainy day funds. We've had a lot of rain in May, so you never know what's going to happen underneath. In fact, down the street from my house, there's been a water leak underneath and the pavement caved in. So I'm sure that was not $30 or $40 to repair. And I just feel we shouldn't be taking dedicated funds, as I want to call it. We're forced to pay for it. We don't have any choice. And then taking that and giving it to this specialized, privileged group over here. I didn't mean specialized, this privileged group that can easily afford some more money for golf if they really want to golf. I don't know how many rounds of golf are played out there in a year's time. If it's another $1, another $5, tell them, listen, guys, this is your choice. Either you up your donations or we close it down. Create a city park out of it and let the kids and the dogs run. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
I'm Valen Tanner, and I live here in Washington on Main Street, and I agree totally with everything that's been said so far. You know, I just keep hearing on the radio how we have such a big water shortage, and we're spending it on one thing that's probably uses up more water than any individual home or block of homes. Why we would encourage investing in a recreational facility that's going to suck water, more water than what this town probably has. I mean, I was here just a month ago to see about the infrastructure of the drainage problem down Main Street and how we were going to, how Washington was going to fix that at the expense of adjusting the property taxes. And it seems to me that if you've got any kind of extra money anywhere, it ought to be in the infrastructure of the people that live here. And that's just sort of my feeling. I've seen this robbing from Peter to pay Paul. I mean, you see it all the time, and it never has a good outcome. I mean, if you're going to do something like a golf course, like everybody else says, it should pay for itself. If it doesn't pay for itself, you got no business being in it. Those are my thoughts, and I'm dead set against it. I also know that I have a couple of properties up at Winter Haven, and it seems to me twice a year I get some kind of a bill from the sewer company because they have to, and I haven't quite figured it out, they have to pump sewage out of one place and transfer it to another place? All I know is I get the bill for it and I get some kind of legalese explanation for it. And it seems to me that if we got that kind of money floating around, the last thing it should go to is a golf course. That's it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Yes, my name's Dean Wallace. I am a resident of this city, and I do believe that the golf course is an asset, but I think it should pay for itself. And I was in Salt Lake approximately a month ago, and they're having some problems with people up there. Their usership of their golf course is way down. They were gonna, if I would have known this was coming up, I would have stayed and listened to what they were gonna talk about. So I don't think it's just here, the problem. And I really think that the council should look at leasing the golf course out to somebody else and do away with the city running the golf course and let a private individual, a private group of individuals or individuals run it. Because I do believe we should keep it, but it ought, I don't think the city should operate, at least the property to somebody and let them use it. They'd probably have a better chance of making money. I don't know why cities can't make money. You know, they always seem to run, you know, I guess when you can tax everybody to whatever you need, and they run out, you know, you're running out of other people's money. You know, we've all been Obama-sized.
Thanks, Dean.
Dean, those are interesting comments because as we've analyzed the golf course over the years, the most expensive part of it is really the people. I mean, payroll is one of the biggest expenses of all of government as we look across things. And some of that's just the wages that we pay, and some of that's the benefits that we provide. Some of it's things like retirement that the legislature requires us to contribute as well. And so you're right, it's more expensive for government because for some reason the legislature gives government higher standards when it comes to contributions to retirement and things like that.
Your comment about privatizing it, and we've actually looked into that and talked to folks about that, and I don't think we're opposed to continue to explore that if it's a way of taking that burden from the city, but keeping it as an asset for the city.
Didn't the city take it on because it was more or less daily?
No, no, the city owned this property when it was just sagebrush. And then the city developed it into a golf course. And so it's one of the nice things. We don't have any payments for land or water. We own those two sources. We do have to pay for all of the equipment and maintenance and the personnel that work on it. In fact, the city was able to sell some acreage around the golf course over the years that was benefited the city in other ways. As the houses developed and neighborhoods came, there was property sales that occurred because of the golf course. But yeah, the city developed this one from sagebrush a long time ago. On the sewer, on the Winter Haven sewer, is there a transfer station or I'm trying to remember the sewer situation for Winter Haven. It's not unique like Coral Canyon, one of those places that have a good water hookup that I'm remembering.
So do you think that's an utility issue? Like, you know, I yearly.
One of the things, ma'am, is you're asking, one of the things Washington City has done differently with its golf course than the many other cities is it was decided to operate it as what's called an enterprise fund, which the legislature expects to have it break even. Enterprise funds don't incur a deficit. Many cities maintain them in their general fund so that every year that there's a deficit, it's just covered by the general fund. It's covered by the general reserve money of the city, and there's never a deficit that accrues, even though our research shows that very few publicly owned golf courses break even. Maybe none do. I won't say none because that's a absolute, but not many do. And so because Washington City operated it as an enterprise fund, they've had to accrue these deficits on the books. Nobody has gone unpaid as you notice, the proposal is that the city basically just pay itself and then take care of that. But it's been an interesting thing, and the changes in the law have kind of caused this to come to a head. And candidly, I think it's good that it's had to come to a head, and I think it's good that we need to have this discussion and come up with a solution.
Also, maybe just adding on to that a little bit too, some of those funds that have accrued of this deficit are really depreciation that they require us to show simply because it wasn't enterprise funds. So it wasn't really dollars spent as it was depreciation that we have to show on the books. And so because the way we accounted for it over the years, it was basically you had to show that there was a deficit there because of being an enterprise fund. And so that's where part of that deficit came out of our general fund, where we just used to write IOUs and said, okay, the golf course owes the general fund this much this year for the deficit. It owes the sewer fund this much this year for the deficit. And the legislature used to allow that to happen as long as it was being transparent. It was showing that it wasn't making money, where the money was coming from. Well, in 2014, suddenly they said, you've got to true that up now. You can't continue to just write IOUs, which is a good thing. And so that's why we sit here today to say, okay, how do we true up, however many years since 87, deficit in one lump sum? How do we true it up today? We know going forward it's got to be true, and so that's we've worked on that portion of it, saying, okay, from now on, how do we keep it trued up? But we've got this $2.7 million now that we say, okay, where do we? And that's why we're talking, saying, okay, do we short-term borrow it from the sewer fund to true it up, and then make that sewer fund whole when we sell the property so it all balances out, or where do we take it from? And that's what we're discussing tonight.
Anybody else? Come on up, Dennis. I did.
Correct.
And I think the latest update is the one by the airport. The airport's going to take it over, I guess. And then if it doesn't make it, then they'll use it for.
I suppose the
landing
reason they're
strip.
doing that is because of the same situation that Jeff has mentioned. You know, and the golf course, when it was built, the people ask me, they say, have you lived here all your life? And I say, not yet. But I was here when it was built, and I recall the 5-county association of governments come and they promoted it. I don't know if we financed it through them or how we did it, but it was proposed that it would actually make money for the city and be supplemental income for the taxpayers of the city, but hasn't worked out that way.
Well, and it may have been if we hadn't have had 15 others come join us in the same game, you know.
That's true.
And so, you know, the
That's
pie stayed
true.
the same, and lots more players have come to the game, and it's become more of a challenge. This council is, I mean, we've had that golf course appraised to look at selling it. And I mean, we've looked at a lot of different, we've looked at privatization of it. So there's been a lot of thought. There's been a lot of work going into saying, okay, how do number one, we stop the bleeding? And then all of a sudden with the legislature piling on, it's like, okay, now we've got to put that leg back on that we've been borrowing. And so that's why we're here.
Yeah, and it's a tough situation. I realize that. You know, as it was started, we anticipated, you know, there'd be a lot of people come here and golf, and they would, you know, provide business for our local businesses and bring an increase sales tax, and it would be that much of a benefit to us. And I suppose it is a benefit to us to a certain extent.
Well, I think that you look at some of the homes that are being built around it, certainly the property tax values. So I think it's been a benefit to the community.
Maybe we
You
ought to
can't just take
get,
the dollars and cents that it brings in without looking at the whole picture. But at the same token, there's the dollar and cents that are bleeding out that need to be addressed.
maybe we ought to get the school trust to
There you
subsidize
go.
it.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, the golf industry is it's going through an interesting metamorphosis, I think, throughout the country.
So basically you're saying that we, the taxpayer, through the sewer fund, the general fund, or any other fund, we're going to get shafted and got to pay for it, period. It's got to be paid. That's it.
Well, these funds have been expended since 1987, so the funds are gone.
Well,
This water has run, right?
yeah.
So now we're looking to say how, because the legislature used to say, like I said, used to say you could put an IOU in those funds and say, someday we're going to pay you back, which in reality probably is, like you said, was never going to happen.
Well, in Washington,
But-
D.C., there's a 4-drawer file cabinet. Half of one drawer has $9 trillion worth
Correct.
of IOUs,
I-
starting with Clinton.
That's,
There is no money.
I'm
They
in the
stole
same
it.
game,
It's all
so I
gone.
understand that.
So only us that are working today will put enough money in there in May and June so that, yes, I get a little $700 social security check every month when I get it in July, but we're paying for it now instead of the last 57 years that I've paid into
I
it.
agree.
It's been gone. My real concern tonight is no matter where the money comes from, we, the taxpayers, all of us are going to pay for it. What are we going to do to stop this hemorrhaging of money at the golf course? Period.
And
I-
this council's done some great things there.
I would come here and say, fine, take it wherever you have to. I would prefer it to come out of the general fund. Leave the sewer fund alone. That's the purpose for that. Come out of the general fund, but it's got to stop.
We agree with that.
We've been talking this for years back and you know where,
Right.
and it's not stopping. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's just ridiculous. But we here locally, we can control it. It's not an easy job, but somehow, since you guys are the bosses.
No, you're the bosses.
No, and we elected you to be the
Right.
bosses. Then
We've done to try and get it to be at least break even. Over the last 5 years, there's been a reduction in full-time staff at the golf course. We recognize that payroll is the most expensive part of this. We've converted some positions to part-time, and the thing that does for us is it alleviates our state obligated pension fund contributions and things like that. Our next big exciting thing is the development of Rio de Sol, which is a 55 and older development that'll be right next to the golf course. We intend to see if we can facilitate them having access right from their community into the clubhouse and the courses. We think that'll help with just a more constant, continual customer base that live right there and like to golf on it. We probably had a meeting each year on how to make this golf course more profitable, how to make it break even. And as you can tell, we've never cracked that nut entirely. 5 years ago, it was losing a lot more money than it is today. And so we've just kept making the strides we can make. I guess if we wanted to just completely resolve it all today, we'd find a buyer who would buy it all and we'd take the proceeds and hope that they cover this entire deficit, and that any extras we'll put them where we go. I don't think I support selling it. I support a lot of other ideas and kind of trying to come up with other ways to see if we can make it at least not be a burden on the public funds.
I don't believe I would support selling it either, and I have never played 1 second of golf in my entire life and never will. I chose not to when I possibly had the time. I've never felt that I wanted to spend that kind of money for it any more than going down to Mesquite and wasting $1. Drove through there once in the last 6 years and that's it. And never going, not say never going back, just have no reason to go down there. My real concern, and my wife and I've talked about this, and I've got 3 adult children here and several grandchildren here. We all came here willingly, not for golf, not really for the weather. In fact, our grandson said he wanted to go to Desert Hills High School, and he was one of the first students there and graduated with honors, and he absolutely loved it. So we came here for that reason more than anything else. And weather's been nice. That's great. Golf, we could care less. There's many, many other things. The community center is just incredible. It's just that I remember Clinton's sleight of hand to balance the budget. He just simply took a whole bunch of money out of Social Security, plopped it over here, and put an IOU in there. Well, like you guys been saying, all these IOUs over the years. Well, payment is due tonight. How are we gonna get it paid? Fine, pay it out of the general fund one time. That's it. If it doesn't balance next year, guys, sorry, we're gonna close you down.
The community center is an interesting parallel. I've gone back and found the meeting minutes where it was discussed that the community center, when built and functional, would also be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't. And it's had better years on some than others, but it hasn't. But it's been in the general fund the whole time. It hasn't been an enterprise fund. And so we haven't accrued this problem there because of just where it's been accounted. And so we've had nights where people are here busting our chops because they don't like the community center. They don't think their fees should be subsidizing
That goes,
benefit.
that
And
goes
so
back to
we
the
have
old
to
argument.
draw those straws and separate those hairs as best we can.
Well, that goes back to the old argument is I have no children in school, so why should I pay school
Correct,
taxes?
Yeah.
Well, it's a benefit of all. The way I look at it, look at the people that walk in the community center and the people that walk on the golf course. Vast, huge disparity in income and living status. The community center is an item that we, the taxpayers, feel is a good thing for the community. It benefits the most people that probably need it the most. A golf course is a luxury item. I don't need luxury items. I don't want luxury items. I just want to have a nice, steady life. Golf is a luxury to me, any way you want to look at it. When I listen to people talk what they pay for golfing, it's just atrocious. And it's cheap here compared to anywhere else, as far as I hear anyway. So the community center may or may not break even. The library may or may not break even. But it's almost impossible to measure the benefit that is derived by the city residents of those two places or a park. The various little dog park down here, drive by it twice every day, and every day there's somebody in there using it. It's a little tiny item. I will never use it in my life, but I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I use the Virgin River for my dogs. Good exercise every morning. My wife's running them tonight because I'm down here. I'm just concerned that we're going to be back here a year from now when we're going to be requested to transfer $486,000 out of the sewer fund, the general fund, the telephone fund, whatever, back to the golf course. You brought up a comment about the salaries. Is it possible that a lot of those jobs could be contracted out? I can guarantee you any person working out there doing nothing compared to what I can do is making 5 times the salary I'm making. And I get no benefits, no retirement, no paid holidays, nothing. I feel very fortunate to be making $11 an hour. Just got a $1 raise after 3 years. And so if salary is the big expense, there ought to be a way to chip away at that.
Well, it's salary plus the benefits.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Paid holidays, paid vacation,
I think it was about
retirement.
a year and a half ago, we had an all-day meeting with a company whose sole purpose is to lease out your golf course and then run it and manage it. And so we've looked into opportunities there. We haven't found one that we thought was satisfactory for a number of reasons. And so we've looked into that. And I think this council would still be open to considering that option if it comes with terms that we think would be acceptable to the community.
You couldn't contract out some of the work that's being done without it actually being a city employee? That's a possibility. I just don't want to be back here next year having the same argument. I look at my bill. I used $6.30 worth of water last month, and I got an $84 bill. I'm thinking, wow, what's going on here? Same thing with a phone bill. We all get those with 37 taxes and fees added on to it. And we're going to pay for it, whether it's the sewer fund or the general fund. Where do you get your money from the general fund? Property taxes, sales taxes, individual fees, whatever. So it's all the same money, just got a different name attached to it in different places. I just don't want, and I've never been a person to begrudge somebody having lots of money, because there's always somebody better off than me, and there's always a lot of people worse off than me. And I don't care if you can go make $7 million tomorrow afternoon on something, have at it. I never worried about it. But I don't want you expecting me to help support your playtime when there's that big difference in income or financial situation. And I'm still convinced that the golfers should be picking up the vast majority, if not all of it. I don't know what it would take. I don't know how many rounds were played. If it took $1 a round more, $3 a round more, tell them, look, guys, you want to play here? I'm positive, because I asked a couple of my coworkers who do golf all the time, and they said, hey, we'd pay $5 a month more, or $5 a round more. I mean, if that's what it took to make it work.
You know, and I think you've got a good idea. We've actually looked into some of that, and it goes back to competition, the elasticity of demand. If you increase your price by $5, do they go to the next golf course? And then all of a sudden you're making less money than you were making. So we have to find that sweet spot where they still come. But if it's too high, they don't. If it's too low, we get more people. We're not making enough money to cover the costs of keeping the course up. So we've looked at all those issues and we're trying to find out the right solution. But you won't be back here next year because whatever happens will be part of the general fund. And we just hope to minimize the losses as much as possible. Same with community center. You know, if we had the community center in an enterprise fund, we'd be probably talking $40 million kind of debt transfers. So
the
it's
business of operating a golf course is fascinating. And one thing we found is one of the bigger costs that you have to cover is the cost of the carts. If your carts sit idle, you lose money faster than if you drop your round fee and make all your carts be busy. And so, in fact, one of the things we did to help improve profitability was to decrease the round rate. But what that did is that increased our efficiency on golf cart usage. And so it helped us cover and even gain some funds on keeping those golf carts busy. And so it's a fascinating business. We've been trying.
You've hit on something that I've laughed about for years, the fallacy of minimum wage. You can't say minimum wage is going to be $15, quote, livable wage, which is a joke. Somebody's got to pay for it somehow. And it's already happening in foreign countries where the minimum wage is much higher. If you go into Austria or Germany into a McDonald's, you don't talk to anybody. You walk up to a machine, you put your order in, the cups pop up for you, a tray comes out for you, you pick up your own silverware, whatever else you need, and you're given a number, and when your number pops up, you scan your receipt, and your food comes out for you. If you don't scan a receipt, you don't get anything. You don't see anybody, nothing. The only person you see is someone coming out there cleaning. Well, the same thing here. What you were talking about, that was MR. We used to call it mentally retarded because you've got to be mentally retarded to go into business or politics. But it's the marginal rate of return, and that's what you're talking about. And if you raise the prices, if you can afford to lose a few customers, but if you lose too many, then you're quote out of business. And I feel for you. I understand. I'm water's under the bridge, or in this case, the golf balls are under the bridge. Nothing we could do about it. That's the past. I'm concerned about what happens on May 28th, tomorrow morning. Is that golf course going to be relatively close, balancing, paying its way? And if not, there's got to be some way to make it work, whether it's salary, contracting out some of it, finding a buyer. And I guess if the other golf courses in this community, and I don't golf, so I don't know where they're at, if they're making money and they're privately owned, why can't this one make money or at least break even? So thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'll go home and tell the wife I gave up and we're going to pay it, but I'm not paying it tomorrow.
Well, the good news is tonight's just a public hearing. We can't
Yes.
do anything anyway.
Okay,
But
I
we
know.
sure appreciate your input.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Oh. No, thank you.
I think, you've heard this word transparency brought up that I've been aware of, being in this position. I think that's one of their goals and issues, is to make all forms of government in Utah anyway more transparent, so that you know where this $10 is going to go, whether it goes to there or whether it goes to there or here or here. I may be wrong, but I think that's exactly what they're trying to get at.
I don't think there's any question of transparency, and Dennis, what brought it probably to a head as to why these types of, because if you've ever watched any of our other local communities, they've had hearings on this in other capacities about these transfers from one fund to the other. And it was, I'm not proud to say, but my hometown up in Kaysville, I feel like this is my hometown. I've lived here over 25 years, but they built fire departments and funded it through their power department with the funds from their power department. And I think that the bigger the firehouse got, the more people were wondering, where did the money for the firehouse come from? And so I think that's what kind of brought it to a head. It's always been an effort to be transparent. This group, I mean, dealt with the community center, the golf course before in these ways. This is just a specific item of saying now, how are we gonna have to do it and make sure the public knows that's how we're doing it. So I think it's fire department in Kaysville is one that
Brought it forward, huh?
Yeah.
And I've got to correct my statement. I saw Mike's eyes rolls back there when I said 40 million. I think 4 million, what I should have been saying on the community center.
Yeah, I was wondering, yeah.
Hey, what's the number? It's
Yeah,
only 10
just
million.
zeros.
No zero.
You know, we're trying, folks. You know, I don't know the answer, but we're going to try and find an answer because we have to find an answer. Come on.
Yeah, I think not to have to, but also, you know, listening to your comments, it's the right thing to do to
Right.
figure out how to minimize.
Yeah, absolutely.
everything else.
I'm not a resident, just, excuse me, Caleb Reese. I'm not a resident, but one thing that I was thinking of, if you would please at least let me speak, is considering a joint venture with St. George. You talked about how if you raise fees, then you're going to drive them to another golf course. However, if you get into a joint venture with St. George and you say, okay, we will come up with a new board similar to a wastewater district, all right? Not every small city will have its own wastewater treatment facility plant. But so what they'll do is they'll do a joint venture with other municipalities, and therefore they could say, all right, we could do something similar with a golf course. We could all, similar to a monopoly, raise all of our fees proportionately, and we don't have to worry about someone going off somewhere else. Just a thought. I don't have any opinion about golf, but it was just something that came to mind, and I thought I'd at least give you that option to consider.
You're thinking with city-owned courses, not really privately owned.
Not necessarily privately owned, no. Rather, you would do a joint venture with all the other municipalities here in Southern Utah that have golf courses. And what they would appoint a board, and they would then draw fees upon users. And then they could do a municipality fee saying, all right, we have to subsidize this, a small portion. You guys can decide how much you want to subsidize it. Or you can say, all right, we're trying not to subsidize it by only use fees. But it does give you a little bit more flexibility without having to worry about driving your customers into another city. You know, you guys double your fees, and all of a sudden the residents of St. George they're loving it because they're now able to have all of their golf courses filled. It's just a thought.
I don't know. I'm sure that government would be held to the same standard as the public. Usually collusion and price fixing is punishable by.
No.
It is an interesting concept as I was thinking about it. But
it's
it
something
would be
you can
somewhat of a
investigate.
challenge.
It was just something that came to mind, and I figure if we're brainstorming, what's the worst thing to say?
As I say,
Absolutely.
it's an interesting concept to roll around.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on, sir.
I'm a retired businessman, and I've noticed some years ago, there used to be a little golf course down the road just before I go through the mesa into St. George,
Yeah.
off to the right there down in Ohala. And when he couldn't pay his bills anymore, he had to go bankrupt. Simple as that. There's no politicking or anything about it. When he couldn't pay his bills, he went bankrupt. I keep thinking also, I didn't vote for him, but Obama said something really serious some time ago. He said, if you tried something for 50 years and didn't work, you just should try something else. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a whole story on that little Twin Lakes. I'm not going to talk about it on camera. Why it went in there, which was first. They built that 3 times. You know that?
I'm Jaden Smith from Washington City, and I think it'd be good to keep the sewer funds in the sewer for like everybody else said for rainy days. But let's say, so you take this money out, a year or two down the road, something catastrophic happens, you got to get a grant or what do you call that?
Grant, that'll work.
So you have to pay the loan back and you have to pay an interest fee on it. I think if you keep that surplus of sewer money to the sewer, you're going to save yourself more money for sewer projects. So you don't have to pay that interest back.
Like it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jim. Anybody else? I truly appreciated your comments, folks. We do.
This is one of those topics, Mayor, that happens every time elections are around. This is one of the things that gets discussed at every election meeting, is whether the golf course should exist and whether it should be sold and how we deal with it. Say I'm proud that we've lost less money than when I came onto the council, but I don't know if you should be proud that you're still losing money. And until the circumstances, especially the build out around the golf course is finished, it's difficult to know really how profitable or unprofitable it'll be. So I appreciate everybody's comments tonight. I think there's been some good ones.
Any other comments from council or staff?
No, just maybe just one comment that even if the transfer were to come out of the sewer fund still, is it about $2 million that still would be there? Yeah, there's about 5 million in that fund now. And some of that, to be honest with you, has been generated simply because those funds were here, and I shouldn't toot his horn too loud because he gets a little big headed, but Manager Carter came up with an idea a few years to have our own investments within our own city. And so we have taken a lot of those funds from different departments here that were investable. Obviously, there's certain rules by which we can invest them. They have to be certain bonds that are safe for public monies. But our rate of return has been significantly higher because we have taken that and done that in-house than if we had sent it to the state and invested in their PTIF fund up there. And so because of that, we do have a larger fund in some of these funds to use for future development projects. And so I guess just to know that that if the transfer were to come out of the sewer fund, we feel that sewer fund still, we would never put it in jeopardy. I guess our feeling would be that it still is, we've got a couple $1 million in it if the earthquake happens, we're still going to be able to take care of the problem.
Yeah, I guess I've got to make a comment to that. I don't quite agree with that, simply because it's the same thing we heard about Social Security. You know, it rings true. We got plenty of money. We don't worry about it. We don't know what the future holds.
No, I would agree with
We
that.
don't
I'm just
know.
saying that's.
We're all hearing
We're
this is
not
a
drained.
350-year mark for the big earthquake. If that came in, our easily 2 million or 5 million wouldn't touch what needed to be done for it. And so it seems to me that if the money's there, the prudent thing, I think, is to leave it there and figure out how else to fund the deficit.
We haven't closed the public hearing yet, so we're not going to shut the door on you.
You know, just based on what this gentleman said right here, because you kept it in-house, you had more control. My thought concerning doing any kind of joint venture with another city would just be smoke and mirrors. I mean, I don't know how you wouldn't have any less of a problem. Really. Thank you.
Thank you. If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close this public hearing for consideration of making internal fund transfers from the sewer fund to the general fund.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second.
Nice night.
Sherman, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to the next public hearing for consideration of adopting the 2015-2016 fiscal year budgets for Washington City. Manager Carter.
Thank you, Mayor. Just kind of in preface of the public hearing, Council, of course, has been involved in the budgetary process since probably around November of this year. We've had numerous discussions and meetings on revenues and expenditures, capital investments, and other items. And through the staff and council's work, we presented the tentative budget on our first council meeting in May, for this meeting to then be scheduled with then input being taken by the public and then decision by the council at the first meeting in June. So just to recap, this tentative budget is a proposed general fund budget of $14,248,226. Capital projects fund $4,553,589. The fleet fund $402,550. The municipal building authority $7,748,007. Coral Canyon Special Service District $724,451. The community center fund $2,181,038. The water fund $6,139,701. The sewer fund $2,103,337. The power fund $10,997,988. The irrigation fund $36,188. The storm drain fund $2,020,927, and the golf course fund $1,396,924 for a total tentative budget proposed of $52,552,926. This does reflect a balanced budget.
Questions from the council? It's a public hearing. Switch your focus to our budget. Come on up and. Sure.
Municipal building authority, I assume that's for the new.
Actually, a number of items that fall under the municipal building
Same
authority.
deal.
Community center, park. This building's paid off. This was a municipal building authority as well, and the new public police station.
But that's why it's so much higher than it's been in the past.
Exactly. Right. That and the park, Dennis. Both items.
If I come up, Bill Hudson, Washington City. I have quite a few notes, so hopefully you'll bear with me. My first question, I'm hoping, and I had sent an email to Kimberly, that I was hoping that you could tell me what the fund balance is in each of the enterprise funds going into the new budget year.
I ran these numbers just as of today, so this is kind of where we are for that. So for the water fund for unrestricted cash, it's $5,352,331. There's 0 impact fees. For the sewer fund, it's $5,104,004. Impact fees are $1,002,955. The power fund is $3,146,361. They have 0 impact fees. The storm drain fund has $2,292,756, and their impact fees are $553,856.
Are there any,
So,
no golf and no?
so the golf course has none. The fleet is not actually an enterprise fund, but it also has none. It balances out. And then the irrigation fund has none.
Perfect, thank you. My first, in the opening statement from the city manager to the council on the budget, it says in there that it is a balanced budget. It says you're budgeting that there's a 5% increase in revenues this year, which is awesome. But I'm also concerned that you're continuing to use fund balance next year in the budget. You're budgeting over $300,000 to be used out of savings account for a budget to balance the budget when you're having increases again. I'm very concerned that this is becoming a habit. If you need those funds, why are we continuing to use savings accounts for those things?
Well, first of all, and you know this, we have a restriction on the amount of fund balance we can actually accrue.
Up to 25%.
To 25%. The council's actually set 18%. I believe it was actually your council that said that. set an 18% limit. So we do try to maintain that requirement established with respect to that. And also the fund balance is, we do have one-time funding issues that come up that the council, as they deliberate, determine that the fund balance is an appropriate place to use fund balances. And what we've typically traditionally found is that even though we budget a certain amount of fund balance, in many cases we're well below that by the end of the year because of actual revenues that come in. But the council can determine whether, if it's an appropriate point to have, for instance, roads. We have determined that some of our roads ought to have some fund balance because there are pressing needs today that the funds are not right there, but the fund balance is used for that purpose.
Appreciate that, bringing it as a concern of mine. On page 13 of your budget, the transfer, the additional $600,000 for the MBA, is that for the golf? That's for the new park and the police station. So an additional $600,000 per year is coming out of the general fund to pay for the golf course or for the park and the police station. Is that correct?
It's debt service, yeah.
Okay. The contribution that you're budgeting to go to the golf course this year is 300,000, 317.
Again, as Councilman Turek has mentioned, you've got a component of depreciation involved in that as well.
Right. Well, that brings up a great question, because as I go through this, I saw that, and I don't remember ever seeing a depreciation line item in the budget before.
It's depreciated in the audit, and you did see the audits, and there's a depreciation line item in each of the audits.
So where does the money go?
Well, it just becomes an accrual. Okay, so we talked about this deficit. Part of that is due to this accrual of depreciation that is noted by the auditors at the audit period, and that has helped build onto this, but it has to be made whole. So one of the things we've actually talked about with regards to, and I see Kimberly keep wanting to come on up, so Kimberly, you can just come up whenever. But one of the things we've talked about as a savings opportunity for the golf course is to bring the golf course into the general fund, because as a governmental fund, it doesn't have a depreciation requirement under accounting rules, which under a proprietary fund it does. So that's one of the things the council's actually talked about as a cost savings to the golf course.
I wanted to try and address a couple of Bill's questions, particularly on the general fund. The general fund, on the increase in the overall expense, it is actually directly related to the debt service going out. So if I were to pull out those added transfers that's going over to the MBA, the general fund budget would actually be less than our estimate for this year. So there's additional transfers of about $900,000 that are for, I had to pull up my stuff and I looked at it just earlier, but it's around $900,000. And if you were to look at the budget, it's only increasing by 800. So we'd actually have a net decrease if those didn't occur. And then with the debt service that's needed for the MBA fund, it is coming with a revenue source. So the Sullivan Park is being paid for with impact fee monies. It is not using any of the general fund operating monies. And the police station, about 35%, I think it is funded by impact fees, but that remaining portion would be picked up through the general fund operating cost. And then we have, I think we talked about that, the transfer for the golf course, which was $300,000. And that is right now because it does include depreciation. The reason we have to include that is because it's already at basically a negative net retained earnings. But we are anticipating having the council address that and look at the next 2 weeks at bringing that in as a general fund item that would reduce by about $140,000, I believe, in terms of the cost that the general fund would be contributing towards the golf course.
Thank you. So I guess you have to have a line item for depreciation, but the money doesn't actually go anywhere.
Well, again, there's a train up when we're talking about actual money with regards to the 2.7 in the golf course, and a good portion of that is depreciation.
Well, but like in the electric fund, it's $700,000. That's a lot.
Well, and so really what we're looking at is a pre-audit versus a post-audit notation on, and it's always been a post-audit notation on the depreciation. So that's where we don't have necessarily a funded depreciation line item, but it is a depreciation that still affects the book value of the funds, and that's done in the audit.
It just, to me, I'm looking at a budget that says you have this much money and this is how much is going out, and there's $700,000 coming out of the budget for depreciation on electric.
So
in the
when you
electric
look at-
department.
When you look at profitability and costs, just to determine profitability, depreciation's included down there, even though it's not a bill that was paid. It's just it's essentially an expense, but a paper expense.
But your line, it's in the line item, so where's the money go?
The money is.
It's taking it out of the budget.
And the reason why, the whole reason why is depreciation assumptions are that you'll someday have to replace that asset, right?
But where's the money? So is it just fund balance of 3 million? So it's just adding that to the fund balance? That's all I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, in this fund where there's not positive revenue, there is no money. I mean, it's a negative.
It's the IOU.
There is no money.
Okay,
because-
so
because
I'm
it's already a
I'm
negative
talking,
account.
I'm past golf course.
Okay.
So I'm at water, I'm at electric, I'm at storm, I'm in sewer. There's a line item in the budget for depreciation, and where's that money going? Because what I'm seeing is I'm looking at like the electric fund. Now you're using fund balance to balance the electric fund, but you're taking $700,000 out for depreciation. Where's that 700,000 going? Does that make sense? That's what I'm trying to figure
So
out.
the question is, can you look at it on a cash basis, I think is what you're trying to say. You look at it on a cash basis and depreciation, just a paper thing, there should be extra 700,000 if you're cash basis.
That's all I'm asking. Is that money really staying in the fund balance, or is it going
in a
somewhere?
savings account for future, or where's it going?
It just becomes part of the retained earnings at the end of the year. So when you, at the end of the year, when you do accounting for enterprise funds, if you actually look at the end, you'll see a lot of expenses that don't exist anymore when you get to the end because they become capitalized as assets. And depreciation is one of those things too. So when you're looking at the budget, it doesn't necessarily equate to this is actual cash when you're dealing with the enterprise funds versus the governmental fund. So correct in terms of the depreciation won't actually get spent, and what it will just become is retained earnings, and it'll move into
So yeah,
if
part of
they-
what you
if the
need to remember
revenue
is there's a
comes in.
conversion to asset at some point too, and that's another factor in the budget process.
Okay. All right, I'll see if I can.
Well, it's a good question that actually takes whole semesters to teach on and appreciate.
And I'm not smart enough to figure it out, so I hope somebody else is able to get it because it didn't. Anyways, let's go. Let's see. On the fire impact fee, was the impact fees increased on the fire department for fire?
Yes, it's essentially a public safety impact fee now.
Okay.
And it not only includes the fire and an eventual building of another building, which we'll need, but it includes, as Kimberly mentioned, approximately, I think, 35% of the police station, which qualifies for the impact.
It was just a big increase. I was curious about
Yeah,
that.
that's it.
And then the power department, the electric department doesn't show that there's any impact fee revenue this year. Is there, did you get rid of the impact fee for electric?
Yeah.
No.
I didn't, I wouldn't imagine you would have, but it shows there's nothing budgeted there.
The revenue source, you mean, impact fee revenue source?
No revenue.
What page are you on?
Page 42.
That might be easier for us to look at real quick.
You're on the detailed budget, Bill.
As detailed as I can, yeah.
Well, the one yeah.
That was on the website, yes.
So there's oh, I see where he's saying. So he's talking about the line 37. Electric non-operating revenue impact fee. What's that? Yeah, we'll just have to look at that. Because yes, we will be collecting impact fees.
And then let's see, on the next page, page 43, there's uncollectible accounts, and that's gone away. Is there, what's happening with the uncollectible accounts? Shows that in years past, there's been costs associated with that. Now it's gone away.
In the past, we haven't budgeted for the uncollectible accounts. It's a year-end transaction that takes place when there's a calculation where you determine that there's a certain percentage that possibly could be written off, and you accrue it just like we accrue compensated absences. So at the end of the year, we look at how much leave time is on the books for an employees, and you convert a portion of that over to an expense, even though you physically didn't spend the money. The same thing works for these write-offs. So it comes in as an expense and accounting that happens at the end of the fiscal year in conversions. We don't budget for it because it's not actual.
We don't want to budget for losses. We want to be optimistic. We're going to collect all of it.
Okay. I think that looks like you're doing some things with the golf course with revenues and leases and things like that. Hopefully those work, because the way you're budgeting, those are very optimistic. I hope that works out well for you. Thank you for letting me speak and get confused by depreciation.
We appreciate you as a citizen to spend time going through the budget and coming in. That's what it's for.
If nothing else, you highlighted where in prior years, we've had around $500,000 budgeted and there's zero this year. So you found a pretty glaring vacancy. And so that'll get looked into. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? That was pretty thorough.
I say this every year, but just to say it again, this is the public hearing when the legislature makes us whole, and I support the legislature in requiring this. When we haven't approved anything, we work with staff for a couple months and present it to the city and the citizens and ask for your input. So I appreciate, especially Bill, there's time that you could have spent golfing that you spent on this budget. I appreciate that.
Which if you would, it would help. Okay.
Well, and for those that may be watching on TV, they're still until what, the 10th of June when we adopt, that we're still taking that input. So there's still time to go and find the budget, go through it. If you see questions like that, there's certainly, you've got Kimberly and the manager internal, us as council members, certainly like to see your emails to ask those questions, because that gets us thinking and talking and looking at those things too. So it doesn't stop tonight. We still got a couple weeks that we're working on this thing.
Councilman Turek, thanks for saying that. And also, the budget is an opportunity for you to express your priorities. If you say, hey, your priorities are wrong and how you're spending our money, that's a chance to say, what about this? Should we put more on roads, more on this, more on stormwater? That's the whole purpose. Get your input. It's your money. How do you want to see it spent? What's your highest priority? So definitely this input.
Couple of technical questions, since I don't know the answer. Where would I obtain this budget?
If you go to washingtoncity.org, it's on our front homepage.
Okay.
Towards the bottom of the page, it's their fiscal year 2016 proposed budget.
I believe there's a hard copy of the library, which we're required to do if you want a hard copy as well.
If you want a hard copy, just look at it.
It'll have the manager's kind of letter that summarizes it, as well as the 53 pages of detail.
In addition to that, is there a very detailed budget available for the golf course entity by itself?
We have several levels of budgets. We have, of course, once you go on and see this, you'll see the specific line items, not just the totals that we've talked about tonight. I gave totals. You'll see the very specific line items from wages to fertilizer. Okay. We also have internal working documents, which we're happy to even boil it down deeper than that. The council's involved in on a very minuscule level. So we have a number of levels, but maybe what would probably, once you take a look at the one either on side or that, it does get more detail than I gave on the grand totals tonight. You'll see probably as much detail as you want to see on that one. Hopefully so, and if not, let us know.
Spent my life working with multi-billion-dollar budgets, so I'm very familiar with them. Previous speakers brought up a lot of good ideas. You really need to look at the line items because they tell the story.
Yeah.
And to me, the real question that I came here for was the golf course. So I want to go in and look to make sure that I'm speaking correctly and what is going on. What the salaries for the employees, for example, are they reasonable for this area for the work they're doing?
Couple other thoughts just with regards to that I hope that I certainly will make this invitation and I hope you'll take advantage of it. Barry Blake is here. He's our leisure services director. Barry, just kind of signal who you are. Don't ever hesitate to contact Barry, myself, Kimberly, of the council to, if there's something you have a question on, and we'll do our very best to explain that. And we really do like doing that, because we just as soon do that than somebody think it's something else. And then we have to kind of unwind that. But Barry's a great one to talk about. Barry, this was a question I had. What is our current full-time? Are we 6? Yeah, so currently, and we used to have more than this, we're currently at a total full-time staff for that golf course of only 6 employees. And full-time. And we do have both volunteer that, and we have part-time.
The golf course starts on page 48. If you find it, it'll go till page 50. You'll be able to see projections on green fees, on cart rentals, on driving range. It's all there, and you'll be able to see. The way we present it is we give you the 2014, 2015 budget, 2015, 2016, which is what we're in now, correct, Manager? It's only taken me 7 years to figure this out. Are we in the 2014, 2015 now?
2015 now.
We're closing, we're halfway through 2014,
you're right now,
2015
yes.
now. So you'll see the 2013, 2014, which is now over and gone. Is that not right?
Yeah.
So the prior year actual is
The prior
13,
year?
14.
That's right.
The current year estimate is 14, 15, and it's that because we're only halfway through it.
Right.
And then we're talking tonight about the 15, 16 budget.
Right.
Because
Our
we go July to July, and
July.
so it still confuses me. But you'll see three categories, so you'll be able to even have some comparison.
Well, when all is said and done, there isn't any other place in the entire world I would prefer to live than right here in Washington County and Washington City. I have enjoyed my 9 years here very much. And in fact, my 3 adult children have moved here and 7 grandchildren have moved here, and they love it. And we have no desire to go anywhere else. We will never golf, but we use the community center. We use the library. We like the park activities when they happen. And we just think it's a great place to be. Our little brother down the street, St. George, well, they're okay, but I still prefer this place. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Appreciate that.
I just got to say, Barry, looking at the staff you have, you keep the golf course looking beautiful. It's immaculate out there.
Okay. I'm going to entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we close the public hearing for our fiscal year budget 2015, 2016.
Before I second that motion, just say this has been the best budget hearing I think we've had. We've had years ago where there's no comment. So thank you to everybody who's contributed. And I'll second Councilman Turk's motion.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second.
Truman, aye.
Second Miller, aye.
Turek, aye.
All right. We'll move on to item 6, preliminary plat. Consideration to approve the preliminary plat for the crossroads at Stuckey Farms, located approximately 4800 south, 900 east.
Sorry, Mayor, I didn't expect us to get here this quick. So. You all know me well.
I don't know what time frame you're on.
Thank you. We're finally there. As stated, the applicants request an approval of the preliminary plat for we are on the crossroads, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. At Stuckey Farms. The applicant's wishing to develop 65 lots, and the area of coverage for the crossroads is 18.9 acres. I say this particular place because this is part of course, the Stuckey Farms Master Plan Community, as we call the PCD. The preliminary plat was originally approved back in 2013, but no work was ever brought forward to go for final plat of any phases, so it subsequently expired. That's the reason they're back here. It's the same subdivision. Staff's reviewed it. The Planning Commission reviewed it as well on their May 6th meeting. And the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval. of the preliminary plat for the Crossroads of Stuckey Farms subdivision to the city council, and it's based on the findings and subject to the standard conditions that we have for a preliminary plat. And I'd be more than glad to answer any questions the council might have. Again, this was, they're just bringing this back again. They're ready to move forward at this time.
I've got a few questions, Drew, if you don't mind.
Okay.
There in the corner between 6 and 7, what's that little triangular piece that, is that a common area piece there with, is that a
It
trail
will
along
be a
there?
landscaped common area. A lot of, if you've gone through many of our PCDs, they have their corner pieces there that are just kind of a nice landscaped entrance type of a thing at corners, main corners. And that's basically what this is. You can see the trails are those skinny parallel lines that run side by side and kind of zigzag through, or 10-foot trails that'll meander through that landscape area. So
Okay.
that's all that particular area is, just an open space common area.
And does this plat extend to just the backs of those lots? I'm looking along kind of the 40s and the 50s, or does it extend to the back of the line behind the open space and trail area?
It is that line right there that, where you see that future, it's that line to, well, no, on this
I
particular
see a
one.
10-foot meandering trail and a
Yeah,
dark
the
line.
subdivision itself is those lines that have the measurements on it there. That is the subdivision. But again, this is part of an overall master planned area. And
So
the
is it-
others are just showing future development parts
Is
of
it
that
this
area.
plat that dedicates that open space, or is that going to be a subsequent plat?
It'll probably, well, it won't be ours. And so I'm not sure. We'll have to address where that may come. It'll be under the PCD's overall criteria, like us. And we have this throughout Sienna Hills. They have a lot of open space, if you're familiar with Sienna Hills. But they have dedicated a lot of, most of the trails in Sienna Hills, maybe not all, because some of them we don't accept because they're gravel. And we'll just have to wait, but we may come back at a future date like we have in Coral Canyon or Sienna Hills if they want to dedicate them to the city, and we're willing to take them over depending on what they're built out. So.
And then all those other lines out to the right, the lake and things like that really have nothing to do with this plat then?
No, they're just, a lot of them, you can see that Village 3 is designed out. Again, it's just following the design of the PCD. And the lake, again, it's all part of that master plan that they're just showing that was approved as the overall site plan for the whole project. Good questions.
Although the detention basin is always one of the standard condition, it doesn't look like there's going to be any detention basin this particular.
No, but they'll have to show how it gets to the ones that are designed for the whole project. That's the beauties of PCDs, I guess. I like to say I'd love for it to be in a city that everything's a PCD because it's all tied together. And so it's just part of how they're getting the water to the main detention areas that have been designed, pre-approved and designed as part of the PCD.
So those are already built and in place. The water would just.
Or will
Some
come.
of these are on this one, on this
And
project.
some of them are. I think this one is tied to that park area. Yeah, that's why they had to come back and redo that. I don't know if you were on the council when they had to redesign and build that park detention in the meadows across the street from this. Wasn't part of the original, but when they ran in and were doing putting the numbers together for finals, all of a sudden they realized they weren't going to be able to manage, so they had to come back and make an amendment. So this one and the next plat that you will see tonight are both earmarked to go to that park that's a detention basin in itself. So.
Hey, Mike, if this would have gone through this master plan project, in the original version, which would have been what, 90, 100 years ago, there wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have had that type of drainage system put in there because that's been a relatively new.
You're referring to like Red Hawk?
I think
That was the original name.
Sure, but I thought it was Stuckey Farms before Red Hawk.
Oh, it was. It was
Oh,
Stuckey Farms, Red Hawk, and then
Yeah.
back. South
This is-
Mountain.
This has been from 25 years ago at least. We get more retention, more drainage facilities in here than we would have back then, right?
Any other questions on this one for Drew? If there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion, we approve the preliminary plat for the crossroads of Stuckey Farms located at approximately 4800 South, 900 East.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Turek, aye.
Sig Miller, aye.
Truman, aye.
Nice and I.
All right, that one is approved. We'll move on to B, consideration to approve the preliminary plat for the homesteads at Stuckey Farms located approximately 4900 South, 700 East.
Thank you, Mayor. The homesteads this is basically due north from the one we just reviewed. The homesteads, again, once in the PCD of the Stuckey Farms, they are proposing 92 lots, and the area coverage for the homesteads is 35.75 acres. This one was also approved at the same time as the crossroads was. They came in kind of together then, and they're coming together now. But again, both of them expired due to lack of any movement forward. This proposal also meets all the standards, and the design is laid out in the preliminary plat. One of the big questions we had in the public hearing, just to bring to your point, was the property in this square that you see here is not part of the PCD of Stuckey Farms, but is the Hancocks and Gibbies, et cetera. It's a family piece there, and they wanted to make sure they had access to their property. And those two roads that you see there between lots 8 and 9, as well as 34 and 35, give access to that piece. There still is a bit of usable land there at the base of where it juts up into that, I don't even know what you call that, the bluff. And so we pointed out that those accesses were there, as there was an agreement between the Hancock and Gibby families and Stuckey Farms that there would be access given because of some other trading and swapping of some things. And so that was brought out and made sure that was there. So the Planning Commission reviewed the request also at their May 6th, 2015 meeting. They unanimously recommended approval for the preliminary plat for the homesteads at Stuckey Farms to the City Council. And again, based on our standard findings and conditions as outlined in your report. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might.
Drew, I have a few questions. On the prior Crossroads plat, there was sidewalks and things that were clearly delineated, and I'm not seeing those here, like especially along the Stuckey Farms Parkway. Is there a sidewalk? Is it just not labeled?
I think this one is actually part of the curb and gutter on this side. And it looks like to me showing those particular lines right there. That's generally a sidewalk. You know, it seems very thin, but that's kind of what it is. They're not having the meandering ones go through. This doesn't mean that it won't come back and be put through that at that time. This is just showing the right of way edges. So, but there will be sidewalks. It's all part of whatever the road designs are. They have to meet that.
Yeah, well, surely they didn't want to put in sidewalks if they hope to sell these things.
Right.
So,
And there will be, again, with these internal streets, the 50-foot public street, I can guarantee you has sidewalks on each side. And again, those are the street cross sections were approved as part of the PCD master plan. They'll have to follow when that road name is on that design actually takes precedent over a lot of what you see maybe on this particular plat. Those crossroads.
That's the only way they wouldn't have sidewalks, is if
Yeah.
it was specifically approved and discussed it.
Yeah, so I guess the best way to answer this, it could still end up in that landscaped area as a meandering one or be right at the edge of the curb and gutter, depending on what the design was.
Any other questions? If not, again, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve the preliminary plat for the homesteads at Stuckey Farms, located at approximately 4900 South, 700 East.
I have a motion, to have a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you, Ron.
Nice and I.
Truman, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Okay, that's approved also. Item 7, plat amendment. Consideration to approve a plat amendment for the Casitas at Sienna Hills, Phase 1, located approximately 1860 East, 925 North.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll try to keep this as simple as possible. We had a situation much like this in the Bluffview townhomes. When they came to lay out the buildings, they realized that the company that laid in the utilities kind of pushed them a little too far one way than it should have been, because there is no roads or anything when they're coming in, putting in water lines, sewer lines, electric, etc. When they came to put the buildings, these particular ones that you see in the report, units 9 through 11, 12 through 14, 28 through 30, 31 through 33, and 34 through 36, they were a little bit too close to particular utility lines. They've come in just to bump those. The ones on the north side of the street, they had to bump them a little more to the north. The ones on the south, they had to push to the south. They did not, luckily, have to touch buildings 15, 16, and 17 for some reason. So that's not needed in the request, but it is these other ones that you see here on the screen. And again, they just had to adjust them a few feet to make clearances away from those particular utility lines as required by those utility lines. So it's pretty much simple. We're just kind of bumping these, and because this is the nature of this platting, normally you don't worry about it, but because you have all common area and everybody just owns their footprint in that shaded area, it's most important that those homes the plat be accurate to where the home is, especially if you go through title search, etc. So that's why these footprints, because they are the private ownership, the rest of it being common area.
So the impact has basically been to take away from common area a little bit.
Actually, it increased the limited common area, the driveways in these particular ones, so which is still open, but it did take a little bit of the clear common area and the limited common area, which is the X'd out areas that you see, or the driveways, increased. So the open area and the whole thing is still net whatever, same. It just is either it got moved out of common into limited common.
Council's got it correct. We shoved them back.
Yeah. So there's a little more asphalt than landscape. I mean, or it's going to be concrete in this case with the driveways. So in essence, that's what it is. Anyway, staff, I guess I never got to the meat of everything, and but the Planning Commission reviewed the request last week at their meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the amended final plat for the Casitas at Sienna Hills Phase 1 to the City Council, and of course, based on the original conditions and findings that you see in the report. Always make sure the originals get tagged forward. So, if there's any other questions, I'll be glad to answer.
You did that well.
Tried to keep it brief, but it's a lot of movement.
So are all these plats, does this mean we have some movement going on down at Stookie Farm and out at Sienna Hills? Do you think these are coming through in preparation for?
Well, if you've noticed, there's buildings being built out at the Casitas right now. There's 3 of those units that are up and erected. And you are starting to see the meadows it's over half full. And so I think they're ready to move over to the homesteads and the crossroads. And to my understanding, Mike, you may not know for sure, but I think all the water and the sewer lines are done and ready. Didn't they get those all in originally? But so there won't take much for them to come in with the curbs and gutters and asphalt and finish up. So I think they're ready to move that direction, because things are moving down in Stookie Farms. And of course, we see these 3 buildings, and Ivory Home is ready to rock and roll here at the Casitas. That's who the developer is here at this particular item, is Ivory Homes. And they're ready to move on it and get, like I said, they've got 3 up, and they might have plans in for the next 9. I can't remember, but they're moving forward.
There's no additional discussion. I'll make a motion to approve a plat amendment for the Casitas at Sienna Hills Phase 1, located at approximately 1860 East, 925 North.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Nice night.
Truman, aye.
Segment right.
Turk, aye.
All right, that's approved. Item 8, award of bid and RFP. Consideration to award the bid for the Warm Springs Detention Basin drainage improvements for 2015. Mike Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. On Tuesday, the 19th, we publicly opened bids on this project. We had a total of 6 bidders on the project. JP Excavating came in with the low bid on the project at $277,000, $277,081.55. Unfortunately, our low bid was the engineer's estimate.
I was gonna say, are prices going up or are engineers becoming more conservative?
I wanted to award that to them, but they.
I'm
they
comfortable
wouldn't
with
accept
starting
it.
with the engineers doing the work.
We have seen increasing in pricing lately, so I think the pricing was a little old that they used on this project.
Explain this project just a little bit, Mike.
This is up at the top of Main
Main
Street,
Street.
behind the substations. In the previous last few events that we had very large debris flows that came down, and that's what caused most of our problems, is those debris flows coming down, plugging up our storm drains, also filling pipes up. What this is a sequence of basins, sediment basins, that will settle out the sediment and debris, as well as detain the water, so that our drainage system downstream will be able to handle those flows, those large events.
So is that just along Green Springs Drive there?
No,
between-
it's along Buena Vista.
Oh, excuse me, Buena
Yeah,
Vista.
behind the
That's what I meant.
substation.
On the south side of the road.
Correct. Yeah, right up against the freeway fence. And we're also building that to, you know.
So the
for
water has a tendency to come across up at Warm Springs on top, come to the south side of the road, flow down along.
Correct. And we'll be
between the
putting, I
freeway, so-
believe it's a 36-inch pipe across Buena Vista to catch those flows that were flowing across the road.
Okay, so you're gonna collect it even higher than that,
Yes.
bring it across the road, so let it just flow across.
Yes.
Well, this is a problem area, especially as we've developed it there. I think it's important to invest in it so we have as minimal impact downstream as possible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We've seen some of those impacts, especially on those residents on Main Street and whatnot, where those flows have negatively impact those residents. So it'd be nice to see if we can correct that.
Is this an impact fee eligible project, Mike?
It is. It's a, we added into our capital facilities plan. And we're hoping that we can have it constructed by our monsoon seasons. They've started seeming to come a little later in the year, so we should have it built by August.
May was kind of rainy. They came nice and slow. Came
Yeah,
nice
but
and
those
slow.
are nice slow rains. I'll take those anytime they want to come.
Any other questions or
No
comments?
other comments, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we award the bid for Warm Springs Detention Basin Drainage Improvements to JP Excavating, who is the low bidder, in the amount of $277,081.55.
I'll second it. Thank you. I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Sig Miller, aye.
All right, that's awarded. Thanks, Mike. Consideration to award the bid for an independent audit contract. Kimberly?
Mayor and Council, back on April 29th, I sent out a request for proposals for our audit services. Our previous contract we had out expired with our last audit that we did, and so we'd had a number of inquiries from firms looking to be able to bid on our services. So we went ahead and put that out. We sent it out to 6 firms, and we received 4 proposals back on that. The scoring criteria on that for this particular purpose, only 35% of it is based on cost. Then we have 25% as on the responsiveness of the proposal, 20% on qualifications of staff, and 20% on the technical experience of the firm. So we put together a scoring sheet, and then the bids were reviewed independently by our finance supervisor and myself, and then the scores were averaged together to come up with that. And so on our final score with that, the high score was for Hinton Burdick CPAs, and we recommend at this time that they be awarded our services for fiscal year 2015 through 2019.
Maybe you've given this to me and I missed it, but what was the spread on the bids as far as?
So the spread on the bid, let me switch real quick. The actual spread on the bid in terms of pricing stemmed from, and this would be for each year, so for 5 years, the 2015 through the 2019, with a maximum not to exceed cost, spread from $112,500 to 151,500. The biggest difference that you see between that has to do with the number of audit hours. So we also asked them to break out what are the number of hours you anticipate putting in and needing to perform the audit as well. And those hours range from a low of 205 hours to 350 hours. Between.
25% of this score was that price.
Yes.
You did a cumulative price, correct? That was a 5-year.
Yes. Yes, we did.
We pay them yearly, I believe.
We do pay yearly, and we pay, if there's one of the other things we asked for was the cost for the single audit services. Occasionally, we do receive federal funding that puts us into that reporting category. And so we ask for that as a separate pricing. Those costs aren't part of
Those would be
this.
additional.
Those would be additional. They range between they're mostly about the same price, but they usually range between $2,200 to $3,500 for that service.
Is there a reason we use, is it a 5-year time period?
So we did do a 5-year time period on that.
I say, what's the thinking behind that versus 2 years?
The thinking of the 5 years is just generally, like if you were to look up, and the reason we also looked at the cost for the 5-year span is a lot of times the first year cost is actually greater to the firm because they have to come in and they have to do some reviewing of your prior years and things like that. So once a firm has been with you and has been set up and becomes familiar with your accounting structures and things like that, they have a lot of their programming, the software is already set up with our account structures, and they can start to just merge data. We give them exports and things like that. And so a lot of that setup goes away. So versus, 2 years, 5 years, I think is better for them to really understand the accounting structure that each entity has and what's going on. The recommendation, yes, and with the state auditor's office, we actually use the requested contract from the state auditor's office that they recommend when you go out for proposals.
Seems like I can picture people who've done the auditing, but I don't know what firm in the past we had. Is it the Hinton Burdick?
So Hinton Burdick has done our audit for us in the past, and prior to that, it was Wilson and Company. But you have some entities that don't go out. I don't know, there's no requirement that you go out to bid at all for the services. The annual cost is under the threshold that's required for that. We do think that it's prudent that we look at every 5 years or so, just so that you kind of keep that market price in play as well.
Being that they got obviously a high score by pretty good margin, I assume that we've been pleased over the last 5 years with what they've done for us and the price for the services.
We have been.
I also like that they are the only local firm that bid. What does it mean here on the tabulation where it shows no bid from a
So
couple companies?
those means that I listed all 6 companies we sent proposals out to. 2 companies chose not to submit a bid.
Okay, so we solicited them and they didn't.
Correct. Okay. Is there any other questions?
Any other questions? Consider a motion then.
Kimberly, do I need to have the total value of the financial value of their bid if I were to make a motion?
It's not necessary because that wasn't the basis behind the actual bid, but I can tell you that. I've got that right here in front of me if you
If
want.
it's not necessary, I think I'm okay. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we award the bid for the independent audit contract to the accountant firm of Hinton Burdick Hall and Spilker, located here in St. George.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
go ahead.
We'll have 2 seconds, that's all.
Maybe just a
I'll third it.
clarification, maybe
All
just
right.
a clarification of it's a 5-year.
A 5-year contract. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, so noted. Nice and I.
Truman, I.
Seg Miller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you, that's approved. Any reporting from assigned committee members?
I don't have any reporting. I'd just like to say thanks again to the citizens who came today and also to our staff for all the hard work in putting this budget together and
Yeah.
everything we've been working on. It's, the longer I sat here, the more I realized there's a lot of work behind the scenes.
Mayor, it's not necessarily a committee, but my family recently wrapped up another Little League season. And just to express thanks from those families who use the Little League, and I realize there is a financial relationship between the Little League and the city, but I also know the city doesn't charge the league everything that it costs to run it. So just to give thanks to the city staff, especially those in the Parks Department who help keep the fields functional and give those kids a place to play.
That will go then, any more, we'll go to the city manager report.
I just have a
Dean,
couple.
did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a question here is, when I was listening to them subdivisions down Spooky Farm, I know in years past, they were really worried about overfly or something like that.
Yeah.
Being in the way and,
Yeah, we have a, I keep coming up with an airport vicinity land use plan. There are requirements that the FAA does have. We have both, there are easements, I believe, on the plat with regards to aerial easements, but there are certain uses, residential not being one of them.
Right.
But there are certain uses that, depending on their proximity to the airport, are not allowed. I believe some schools, hospitals, things like that. None of those are proposed here. So all these items do meet the qualifications.
because when Red Hawk brought theirs, there was a lot of real problem with that.
That's because it still hadn't been approved yet. So it really worked in a lot of the discussions there. Since then, though, and it's gone in, there's this massive note on the flats too that everybody gets who buys a home there that recognizes, be aware, airplanes will fly over your house.
Yeah, there was a little parcel down there though, there's a no build area.
Yeah, right near the end. There's some open space they've incorporated. I guess my point is, the development design for Stuckey Farms is well in compliance with the.
I just more curiosity than anything because that was really brought up and so a lot of talk was on it. And who's over the airport now? Anybody? They used to go to those meetings.
St. George City Municipal Airport.
Yeah, they used to,
But
Washington used to
nobody
go
on this
to.
council has been, we haven't been invited to sit on that board.
Yeah, I just curiosity because if you follow the patterns of the airplanes, they don't fly over St. George. They fly over us. And I was just curious to why that is. Is St. George really a no-fly zone?
No, it's a FAA designated path. I mean, they're violating federal regulation if they get out of that actual.
Yeah, they fly, when they take off south, they go down and make a sharp turn and then, they parallel the runway until they get approximately Main Street in Washington and then they turn and head straight north. And then they get on the other side of the freeway and then they go around Pine Valley to the west.
Yeah, those flight paths were designated when the airport was designated. That's why the council that was involved at that time fought so hard to get some properties around that airport to say, look, our residents are impacted by this flight path. St. George really isn't. We ought to get some benefit of some commercial development around the airport to offset our poor
I
residents
was watching them one day and I got, well, why do they do that?
Yeah, the flight path comes right across.
And they come
That
in
was the
right
argument we
on the other
used,
side of
right?
Snobkai, and then they come fly in.
Well, that one I can see why they do that one, but to me, that they take off south and then head north and fly over St. George to go around Pine Valley to the
Yeah,
west.
it has
be a
to do
lot
with
more
prevailing
efficient.
winds and I know they have all kinds of,
One of the
that kind
advantages
stuff.
they still have too is the noise level is much greater
Oh,
at takeoff,
I don't
than landing.
You don't, there's
And
no
so at least
airplanes.
we're grateful that they're still taking off most of the time, depending on winds, towards the south, because as they're churning up through the air, the decibel levels are much
You
higher.
don't hardly even notice. them.
Landing is nothing.
It's pretty nice to see them once in a while. But I was just curious to see if St. George actually put a no-fly zone in there.
I don't think.
Yeah, that's all federal regulation. But as Council Turk said, more recently, it dealt with whether or not commercial land benefit Washington City. Prior to that, before the airport got approved, a number of us involved with the debate then, were immediately removed from a lot of people's Christmas card list back then.
And I always.
For those very concerns, we had, and Washington was actually the only city that had an issue with it and made official protests against it and articulated them, but that was mostly it. It was because of the impact of mostly of future growth that was going to go out there and how that was going to impact Council Truman's house when he eventually moved out here, because he assumed that would happen eventually.
And that's why I've got to make this comment. I prefer to think of it as they're flying over the more scenic areas.
Dean, here's a copy. I think Drew's put this up to show the land use designations in relation to the runway right there.
That's why you see the red and the green. The airport Federal Aviation tells how close you can have. That's that border, that's that perimeter right there. And that's why they put their commercial and park area, as you can see right there. And it just kind of, if you look at it, it looks like a big track, like if you were to go to the football field, see the track around, that's how an airport kind of looks with these
Yeah,
circular things, you know.
I can
And-
remember talking about them a long time ago.
Right, and so then there's as close as you can get residences to it, and it's all based, this whole Stuckey Farms was designed with that airport runway where it is. And, but every single one of these subdivisions that is within, even from that point where the red and green are, you know, that dark green where the P and the CCOM is, then X amount of feet out, everybody has to have a note on the plat that it says you live underneath an airport fly zone, so nobody can back. You didn't tell me every plat that is recorded here has to have a special note on it because we have to, by federal law, put that note on there.
Is that like the one down by the river? You're going to get flooded in 5 years?
Or like the golf course where you're gonna get hit by
You're
a
gonna get hit
golf
by a
ball.
golf ball.
That's right.
Thanks.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Thanks, Steve. Roger, do you have any?
Just a couple items that I just bring to the council's attention. I don't think I need to spend too much more time on it. The Sullivan Park, of course, is under construction now. They've begun, fenced it. They've begun some of the heavy equipment there. Again, we're expecting about an October completion time on that particular park. So that's underway. We've got contracts being completed on the police station here. So as you have awarded that bid, we're just completing the contracts, and then we fully expect the construction to begin within 30 days on that project. Of course, our East Regional Water Line is continuing underway. That's the one from Sunrise Valley up over. You all may have noticed, you know, the big buzz is the light of 2000 South and Washington Fields. It'll start flashing tomorrow or Friday. And what we'll be doing to start the flashing, we usually do that for some time to get people accustomed to it.
Phase it in.
To phase it in, we'll yellow flash on the Washington Fields Road and red flash on the 2000 South, and then I can't think of that other road. And we'll do that for a period of time until they feel comfortable with that, and then we'll begin energizing the full signal.
Remind me again when we're going to do the widening of Washington Field Road between Lost Ridge and Majestic View. And are we going to end up taking out those trees on the, is it Iverson's property along there? Or?
Well, we have basically $1 million of funds from the MPO to do the widening. We call that phase 4 of Washington Fields. What we're really focusing right now is between 3090 South and 3650 South. $1 million that's about all it's going to do, and it's just going to add a turn lane and take the asphalt out, make it rideable, fix the 2 intersections. If any money's left over, then we'll start working between the Lost Ridge and 3090. We're going to work at the Lost Ridge and try to extend that east side just a little bit so we can get a turn lane into the Lost Ridge Road.
So will we have to take out those trees, I assume, down the road there then?
Down the road, but that's actually the school district is
Properties, but
property there, and I think they're going to be coming fairly soon, and they'll be actually developing that side of the road through
so
there.
they'll go ahead and widen that and remove that.
Correct.
We'll be widening Majestic on that side as well.
Yes. Well, and then also, if you remember in the budget, we've actually put money aside for a signal at that intersection because if the school comes in, we'll definitely need a signal there.
We're right now, Mike, anticipating that it probably, just because of funding and timing, we'll see a signal there at 3090 faster than Merrill and Washington Fields Lost Ridge, right?
Yes.
The only other item I'd bring up is the 3650. 3650, remember, is that road that we continue to see larger amounts of traffic on due to the Washington Southern Parkway and other things. We're just kind of concluding some documentation on the acquisition of right-of-way in that. And so that actually is, we're really close to beginning to bid that one out and widen that road there at 3650. So
You gonna flatten it or keep it kind of bumpy again, just for?
Well, I think just to keep everything.
Just for the challenge, yeah.
Well, we always like to over deliver and under promise. So we'll go ahead and say,
Flatten it this time.
yeah.
I gotta say, quarter mile at 3090 looks good.
Yes, it does.
Baby steps like it.
Other than that, Mayor, unless there's any questions, I think those are the highlights I would bring to the council.
Thank you, manager. Appreciate that. Move on to item 11, adjournment. Entertain a motion.
We adjourn.
All right.
I'll second.
Ms. Nye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.